At this time, I'd like to bring in our final keynote speaker, Jahn. Chris is coming to us again from Washington, D.C. Chris is the president and CEO of the American Chemistry Council, the leading association representing the $553 billion U.S. chemical industry. Chris joined ACC in 2019 after serving 6 years as president and CEO of the Fertilizer Institute. He began his career on Capitol Hill, including time as chief of staff to U.S. Senator Craig Thomas. He's a native of Wyoming. He and his family now live in Fairfax Station, Virginia. I'll remind everybody before I turn it over to Chris to submit your questions for Chris while he's making his comments in the Slido or Q&A box just below the main screen, and then I'll pop back in a few minutes after his comments, and we'll have some Q&A. So Chris, welcome to our conference. We appreciate you coming in this year. Looking forward to hearing your comments.
Thank you, Chad, so much. I appreciate it. Appreciate that kind introduction. I'm really happy to join everybody today for the forum, and I'm grateful to you and the rest of the team to provide at least this virtual way for us to communicate and collaborate. I think we can all agree that it's more important now than ever to have come together and have discussions like this. There are so many challenges for us, not only in the chemical industry, and as a country and as a world to come together and tackle. So we need to work together to get after this. So for those of you who don't know me, I joined ACC, just read the bio, but I was at the Fertilizer Institute. Before that, I was with the National Association of Chemical Distributors. So I'd like to think that I know a little bit about the chemical sector. And I've got to say that I've never been prouder of the industry and its people than I am now, and the challenges that we've met in regards to tackling the pandemic. I was really excited about this job and really enthusiastic about working for an industry that has such an important impact on our daily lives. And, that's really been borne out through the COVID-19 pandemic. So, I don't have to tell you all that chemical manufacturing has a huge, long history here in Texas, spanned almost a century. And as the chemical industry has grown here in the United States domestically in the last decade, it's grown dramatically here in Texas as well. And so over that time, Texas has become the largest chemical producing state in the country, and the chemical sector is the largest manufacturing industry in the entire state. So the Gulf Coast and Texas in particular is an ideal place for chemical manufacturing for a lot of different reasons, but three primary ones are: one, access to abundant feedstocks; two, strong infrastructure like the Houston port; and three, a highly skilled workforce. And so we rely on those folks to help us do what we do. And in fact, the Texas chemical industry is about $120 billion annually. We employ over 70,000 Texans with an average salary of over $100,000 per year. And we ship literally billions in products to customers all around the world. We also support an additional 320,000 jobs through what we do in Texas. So, with all of you who've got strong ties here, one of our most valuable relationships is with the Texas Chemical Council. And I saw Hector Rivero earlier, and you all just heard from him a few minutes ago. As I said, though, so we're really excited to work with Hector, to work with Chad and other folks in Texas on the challenges facing us. Of course, the COVID-19 pandemic is front and center in all of that. And it's something of an understatement to say it's really changed our lives, but it's really given us a unique perspective on the business of chemistry here in the United States. And so, I want to talk a little bit about what our members have done, how we've responded to the pandemic. And but first want to say, our thoughts continue, of course, to be with those who are battling the devastating effects of the virus on their health. We thank those frontline workers who are saving lives. And, our hearts go out to those who have lost their jobs. And hopefully we can get this economy turned around and going in the right direction again. I think, as you all know, one of the things that makes the chemical industry really unique as it relates to the pandemic is that we never shut down and that we never stopped producing. So the chemical sector has been recognized by the Department of Homeland Security, the federal government, and all 50 governors across the country as essential critical infrastructure for our country. And as you all know, we supply many of the products that are vital to the frontline fight against coronavirus. So, our members have continued to operate, to perform, and provide solutions to the entire world. And, so our members, chemical manufacturers, and your neighbors here in Houston feel special responsibility in tackling these challenges. So our members are manufacturing personal protective equipment like masks, face shields, cleaning, sanitizing, and disinfecting solutions, and all types of medical equipment and supplies. And in fact, you probably didn't know this, but chemistry provides 75% of the value of the cleaning products, biocides, disinfectants that we all need to keep our workplaces and homes safe. It also represents more than a quarter of the value of that PPE that I mentioned earlier, those medical supplies and equipment that we all need right now. Our focus over the past few months has been putting our industry in a position where it can develop the materials that are needed for life-saving innovation and working with our downstream customers to get those innovations into the hands of the people who need it. So right here in Houston, we've ramped up production of vital life-saving products. We've retooled manufacturing lines to produce entirely new essential products. We supported employees and communities with volunteer efforts and philanthropy. We've donated critical PPE to local medical centers. We've actually loaned our personnel, our best and brightest, to the research centers and universities tackling the COVID challenge. And in fact, we've actually quantified this a little bit. ACC member companies have contributed more than $100 million in monetary and in-kind donations to support COVID relief efforts. So now Washington, the font of all wisdom and knowledge, of course, and I know you've heard from a number of your elected officials in Washington, D.C. I do want to touch on some of those issues briefly, particularly in regards to the COVID-19 pandemic and any potential additional stimulus and relief. I think the outlook, kind of like it is outside of my house, is pretty cloudy. It's not clear if folks are going to come to an agreement, but I did want to share, I'm not going to get into the politics of all that. I just kind of want to take the industry focus here and say there's a few key things that we're looking at and lobbying on the industry behalf for. So one is providing liability protection from frivolous lawsuits against manufacturers. We'll also see this as an opportunity to invest in infrastructure going forward. So that's, advanced 21st century recycling infrastructure. Of course, that's also rebuilding our infrastructure, something that I know all of you are interested in. For example, we are strong supporters of modernizing the Houston Ship Channel, which includes support for dredging the channel, as well as the Coastal Spine Project. We're also looking at things that help our member companies, like preserving liquidity for companies, strengthening the global supply chain by removing barriers to trade. And we're also see this as an opportunity to reduce emissions, increase energy efficiency, and take on issues like climate change. We can do all these things at the same time through the miracle of chemistry. So, that's what we're focused on right now in the COVID pandemic. So let me pivot from that to talk a little bit about the economic impact that the pandemic has had and kind of how we see things, here in the short term and some of the challenges we have, and hopefully a little bit of more of a bullish outlook in the long term. So look, just like every industry, our industry has been significantly hurt by the pandemic. And we've seen demand drop across the board in a whole range of customer segments. So if you look at, for example, the auto segment, obviously Michigan shut down for a while. Building and construction, textiles, apparel, we've seen a lot of declines across those areas. At the same time, kind of looking more across the economy more broadly, there's been major disruptions throughout the supply chain. And so, in fact, as we all know, this has frankly been the biggest economic downturn since World War II. And so our projections show that US GDP, consumer spending, and business investment will all decline significantly this year. So in the short term, that means that you're going to see lower capital investment by the US chemical industry. And in some cases, that affects projects right here in Texas. However, and this is a big however, we think that the US chemical industry long-term actually looks pretty good. And our country still obviously has very robust supplies of natural gas and NGLs. And we have, if you look at our industry globally, which we still have and will continue to have a competitive advantage in the cost of our energy and feedstock. And we do see a significant bounce back in the economy in 2021. So the American Chemistry Council has something we call the Chemical Activity Barometer, which is a recognized leading economic indicator, and it shows consecutive gains over the past few months, which typically indicates economic recovery. And we expect that that will continue. It might be slower than we would like. It might be, instead of kind of a V shape, it might be, a little more inching up. But the fact remains that, we're headed in the right direction. And then we believe long-term, the U.S. is by far one of the most attractive places in the world to invest in chemical manufacturing. As I mentioned, the investment we've seen over the past decade because of the shale gas revolution is we've had huge investment of almost $200 billion, that's billion with a B, in either investment completed or in progress or under consideration. And half of that $200 billion is foreign direct investment. So those are companies that are based overseas that are investing right here in the United States, investing right here in Texas, because they see this as the place to be. And so I think that's good news for all of us in the industry. I think that's good news for the Alliance, for the state of Texas, the Gulf region, and really our country as a whole. So let me pivot a little bit from kind of the domestic economic outlook then to the broader kind of global view. Trade is a significant issue for the chemical industry. Typically in a normal year, we would look at something in the neighborhood of $30 billion surplus in the trade of chemicals in our industry. So promoting fair and balanced trade policy is really important to us. And just to be quite candid, the U.S. tariff policy and the approach that this administration has taken on trade has hurt us. It's been a challenge. And I want to be really clear on something when we talk about tariff-led trade policies, that tariffs ultimately are taxes that are paid by American businesses and by American consumers. So again, for our industry, tariffs have done far more harm than good. They raise manufacturing costs. They cut us off from critical inputs in the manufacturing process. They erode demand for that export, and they damage our ability to keep that big trade surplus. And frankly, they also damage long-term trading partnerships and relationships. And I want to give you some numbers behind that. So that's just our opinion. But in fact, in 2019, kind of this on-again, off-again approach, particularly specifically with China, caused basic industrial chemical exports from Texas, this is from the state of Texas to China, last year in 2019, fell by 36%. And that's a direct result of this battle we're having with China. And we're not saying we shouldn't take China on. We're not saying that we don't need to hold them accountable. What we are saying, though, is a tariff-led approach to this does not make sense. It makes it harder for us to, when we're fighting COVID, there's some essential materials that we need to source from overseas to develop these products going forward. So our view is, and we've communicated this with the administration, is that if you want to fortify the global supply chain, if you want a strong economic recovery, we need to work in partnership with the world. We need to work with partnership with our allies elsewhere in Asia, in the Middle East, in the European Union. If we want to take on China, let's do that together. Let's not do that on our own. Further, what we'd like to see the United States do in terms of trade policy is pursue market opening trade agreements with the EU, with the UK, with Japan, and that will help offset some of the damage that these tariffs have caused us. We're also looking at non-tariff trade barriers that will help us address some of our trade challenges going forward. We can get better regulatory cooperation like we're starting to see now, hopefully, through the renewal of NAFTA, now the USMCA, where we have pretty good regulatory cooperation between Canada and Mexico and the United States. We'd like to see ourselves do that globally as well. So that's the outlook on trade. We've got plenty of other issues we could talk about. I'm just going to hit on a few of them very quickly. Clearly, look, the political landscape is very volatile. You've heard from a number of folks today in that regard. I'm not going to get deep into politics here, but it's clear that from investors, from policymakers to customers and consumer demand, they are looking for the chemical industry to reduce the impact of our operations and our products on the environment. And they're looking for us to go beyond regulatory requirements. And that demand on us as a chemical global supply chain has never been higher. So, to deal with these rapidly changing expectations, of us, our employees, the communities in which we operate, we have a few key initiatives I'd like to talk just briefly about. So earlier I mentioned that I had come from the Fertilizer Institute, and it was there I experienced kind of one of my most significant professional challenges is that I helped guide the fertilizer industry through the immediate aftermath of that terrible tragedy and explosion in West Texas in April of 2013. And if you go through something like that, it's hard not to develop a very deep appreciation for safe operations. And unfortunately, we saw another massive and tragic explosion in Beirut just last month, also involving ammonium nitrate. But we have to be, really careful about, hey, these aren't just things of the past or that they happen halfway around the world. Well, we need to make sure that we take care of business here in our backyard. We need to make sure that we are committed to being safe operators and being good neighbors. And so, look, unfortunately, we've seen some high-profile chemical facility safety incidents in the Houston area over the last couple of years. And some of those have involved our members. And so we're not just standing by, we're not doing nothing. We've taken action to try to address those issues. We've worked in partnership with the Texas Chemical Council. We're working with the East Harris County Manufacturers Association. And we put together a group of senior company safety professionals to, kind of learn from these incidents, develop a coordinated industry response going forward. And so we've taken on a number of immediate actions. We've got a new guidebook for emergency management. We've got tools for conducting risk assessments on tank farms. We've updated our protocols for conducting safety assessments of our suppliers, so we have a safer supplier chain. But we also have taken action in regards to air monitoring, for example. And that wouldn't be possible without the close cooperation with TCC and ECMA. So last year, the American Chemistry Council provided a $1 million grant to Harris County to enhance its air monitoring capabilities during an incident. This was something that was identified by the county in its own gap analysis. We're also, what we're intending with the grant is to cover the cost of an additional stationary air monitor in the Seabrook area, as well as the purchase of handheld air monitors. And so we will also help with the training of personnel to use that equipment. And they're working with folks like the Houston Advanced Research Council. And we'll continue to work with them to make sure that we keep everybody in the area as safe as we possibly can. So in addition to taking action there, we're also moving forward on some cross-cutting initiatives to make sure that the communities in which we operate have information about our industry and understand that we are good stewards in the communities where we operate. So I want to talk a little bit about that and what that means. One of the things we're doing is taking a really close look at our responsible care program and making sure that it's living up to the expectations of ourselves, but of course of our key stakeholders. And so we try to have what I would say is a forward-looking vision for the program and planning for what's next. And I think it's really important. I can stand here and say all these great things, but what really matters is about what our members do. It's about our actions. It's about improving our reputation. It's about taking responsibility for our future. So again, that's in our responsible care initiative and our commitment to safe operations. And so what we're doing is taking a fresh look at all of that. We're doing a strategic review. Now, we know that already that responsible care has caused our members to be 5 times safer than U.S. manufacturing as a whole and 3 times safer than non-members. But the whole thing we're built on in terms of responsible care is continuous improvement. So that doesn't just apply to our member operations, but that applies to the program itself. So we've decided it's time to get better. We need to move faster. And we're going to make sure that we remain relevant, credible, and valuable to our members and those communities in which we operate. So that process is just getting underway. But we're very excited that we'll be able to continue to raise the performance of the industry going forward. Closely related to that is our sustainability initiative. And I wanted to say a few words about that. We launched a pretty broad and forward-leaning initiative in 2017 to define the role that we can as an industry play in addressing global sustainability challenges. And so we adopted some principles that were fairly broad in nature that would help us promote the safe and sustainable use of chemicals, hold ourselves accountable, and exceed the performance required of us by government regulations. So right now, what we're in the process of doing is identifying the opportunities to improve our transparency, reduce the impact of our operations on air quality, We are supporting numerous efforts to reduce greenhouse gas emissions throughout our value chain. We're also trying to enable and support solutions that improve the health and resilience of the communities in which we operate. And most important, I think, we're trying to increase the opportunity not only for transparency, but for innovation and taking appropriate actions on risk management to support the greater confidence in the operation of our members and their facilities going forward. So this is a cornerstone, I can't overstate this, of our strategy going forward as an organization and as an industry. It's going to have a huge impact on us as we go forward. So I look forward to coming back in future years and sharing with you the details of the implementation of that. Let me pivot now as I start to wrap up, and talk a little bit about elections and just give you a taste of that. Again, I know you've had a number of politicians today. I have learned my lesson, particularly from 2016, but even earlier, that I try not to predict the outcome of these things. But I think what I want the audience to understand about the American Chemistry Council is it's really important for all of us to be engaged in the process. It's important for all of us to vote. It's important for us all to be informed voters. And also the other takeaway I'd like for you to have is that what we are doing at the American Chemistry Council is making sure that our members are prepared for any election outcome, whoever's in charge of Washington, D.C. and state capitals all across the country. So we've got a very good relationship with the Trump administration and some of the key officials at OSHA and EPA and the Department of Labor and Department of Transportation. But we also have good relationships with folks who work on the Biden campaign and who would be in a potential Biden administration if that's the way the election goes. Because that's the way we at ACC operate. We engage both sides of the aisle at all levels of government, whether it's Congress, agencies, departments, literally in the White House, and even at the international level. Excuse me. I get so excited about the elections, I get all choked up. But to succeed in our advocacy issue priorities going forward, it's really important for us as an industry to engage members of Congress and build them into champions of our industry. And so, we have a number of different ways that we do that. But what I want to share with you, something we did just in the past few weeks, is we went on the airwaves across the country. So in 9 different either Senate states or congressional districts for both Republicans and Democrats alike, we went out with a 7-figure ad buy and recognized members of Congress and senators for their leadership, particularly at a time of crisis, not only on behalf of the industry, but on behalf of us all. And so, for example, one of those people that I'd like to point out, my guess is that many of you in the industry and those in attendance in the audience know her, is Representative Lizzie Fletcher, who represents Texas District 7, which covers part of Harris County. She sits on several key committees on which we care about. So, for example, she's a member of the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. She was instrumental in securing authorization of the Port of Houston expansion project, helping modernize essential infrastructure. So that's a really key one. She serves on the subcommittee on railroads, which is really important to us as well. She also serves as the chair of the House Science, Space and Technology Subcommittee on the Environment. So those are all key issues for us as an industry. And she's really been someone who's been a delight to work with, and we're happy to be very supportive of her going forward. So again, regardless of who's in charge at the White House, ACC and the industry will work as much as we can to have a risk-based approach to develop science-based, common sense solutions to the challenges that face us. Look, regardless of who wins, we're gonna have a challenging road ahead with the pandemic, with the economic recovery. And so we're gonna look for those opportunities to work with whomever's in charge and be fully prepared for any election outcome that we face. I think, as I wrap up here, again, I want to thank you all for the opportunity to talk to you about some of our priorities. I think, look, the chemical industry has always been fundamental to understanding the world's most critical challenges and to overcoming them. And this COVID-19 pandemic isn't any different. We have a long established role in developing the products that make life safer, make the environment cleaner. And we've paired our commitment with innovation to dedication to being good stewards of the environment. So no doubt this has been and will continue to be a challenging year, but the chemical industry has never been known to stand still. We've never shrunk from a challenge. We're at our best when we're on the offensive, when we're taking the initiative, and when we're leading with proactive solutions like many of those I've discussed today. we must and we are leading the way by investing in the future. So I'm proud of how we've responded to the current crisis, and I'm excited about the future. So again, thank you all for the opportunity to be with you here today. I ask that you all please stay safe. I really look forward to connecting with you in person when that's possible. So again, to Chad and the Alliance, thank you for having me. I know you've had a great event today, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Great, Chris. I appreciate it. Really good overview of really all the initiatives and duties that the ACC carries for us across the country. We do have a few questions. We've got time for a few questions here. I'll toss them at you. First and foremost, so you talked really in depth and gave some really good numbers on how tariffs affect our industry and really kind of some of the negative effect that that's had, especially over the last couple of years. You know, we heard from Senator Cornyn this morning or this afternoon about the impacts of the USMCA on Texas. So what does USMCA mean for our chemical industry?
Yeah, so in fact, we're critical in making sure, believe it or not, there's actually a chemicals title to the USMCA. And so there's provisions in there that govern that. And what we try to do here in the chemical industry, and we do this globally, is really take a North American approach to the chemical industry. And we try to align that's what I was talking about, regulatory cooperation. We try to align that as much as we can in North America so that when we're dealing with the EU or we're dealing with China or other trading partners across the globe, is that it's not just the United States, but it's actually North America that stands together. And so if you think about, for example, the auto industry and the number of times that car parts go back and forth across the border, you know, if you think about there's $3,000 worth of over $3,000 worth of chemicals in every automobile. So that's a tremendous amount of value of that car. And so we need to be able to go back and forth under the new USMCA in a tariff-free environment and able to make those supply chains work. So that's a big deal for us. And we were very pleased to see the leadership by the administration and the president be able to get that done.
Outstanding, outstanding. So down here in the Houston area, I'm sure you know Jim Fitterling with Dow, but we had a chance to hear him fairly regularly, and I heard him as I guess it was probably maybe 12, 16, 18 months ago, roll out really an in-depth look at the Alliance to End Plastic Waste. Tell us a little bit about that, how ACC is involved in that, and really kind of what that effort is, if you can.
Sure. Happy to talk about the Alliance to End Plastic Waste, and I actually talked to Jim Fitterling today. So small world, right? So the Alliance to End Plastic Waste was actually born at the American Chemistry Council. So our members came together, a handful of them initially, and then broadened going forward. But what it is over the next 5 years, the Alliance to End Plastic Waste is going to invest more than $1.5 billion, again, billion with a B, in addressing plastic waste issues globally. And so a lot of that, you may or may not know this, but it's 8 of the 10 most polluted rivers in the world are in Asia. And so there are just not waste management practices in some countries in the world that can keep the plastic waste from getting into the ocean. So there we're taking action to address kind of some basic waste management issues there. Here in North America, we're going to be investing in programs that are more in the advanced recycling and solving some of the challenges we have in the supply chain, and taking single-use plastics and bringing them back in what we call a circular economy. So you make the plastic product, you recycle it, and you turn it into something new. So you could take, a yogurt container and turn it into a jacket, or, there's a million different examples of that. So that's what we're trying to invest in going forward and address here in the US. So that's not only just our members, though. I want to be clear about that. Our members have provided the intellectual muscle and a lot of the seed money, but now we've expanded the Alliance significantly. There are over 50 global companies involved. You've got brands like Coke and Pepsi and Procter & Gamble, who all have a role to play in regards to ending the challenge of plastic waste. Let me just wrap up by saying, at the end of the day, plastic pollution, whether it's in the environment, oceans, wherever it is, it's really an engineering problem. And so it's solvable. And so we just need to be able to have the resources and the technology to make it happen. And so it's our goal to have the Alliance kickstart that process.
Outstanding. And I had heard that that originated with ACC and kind of how that came to fruition there. So fantastic leadership there, the organization and by the individual companies that really stepped up to make that happen. So fantastic job there. Here's another really good question that's kind of near and dear to us. We started the day today with a industry careers panel focusing on the chemical industry. So chemical industry jobs create the highest number of indirect jobs of pretty much all of the sectors. Even in manufacturing, if I'm not mistaken, chemical industry is the highest. With our aging workforce, our kind of ready to retire workforce, what is your forecast? What is ACC? Are we doing a good job out there in replenishing that talent and marketing that to kind of the next generation of our chemical engineers and operators and instrument techs and all of those careers that really feed and support this chemical industry?
That's a great question. So that's, in fact, one of the things I was talking to Jim Fiddling about. So we need to do more and we need to be better. We're, as you said, with baby boomers retiring, we have a lot of opportunities for folks who have technical backgrounds, technical knowledge. And so we're trying to make sure that, everybody wants to be in the tech space. So they want to create apps, right? And say, look, the chemical industry is a high-tech environment. And we're doing
the original high-tech environment.
Absolutely. And we're doing a lot of really cool things that, with all due respect to the kind of the Apples and the Amazons, it's actually making a hell of a difference in the world. If you want to address, for example, if you care about climate change, or if you think climate change is a big issue, top priority for us, whether it's alternative sources of energy, there's 10 tons of polymers in a windmill, for example. There's a million different opportunities in the chemical industry. So we are trying to explore ways and partner with folks to make sure that we got the best and the brightest coming in the door. In addition to that, Chad, we're also, I can't publicly disclose anything yet because it's not ready for prime time, but we're also looking for opportunities to bring a more diverse workforce into the industry. And so really creating opportunities for people of color, women, and other folks who candidly are probably underrepresented in our industry, and bringing those folks in to work with us as well. So you're going to be hearing more from us on this issue going forward, but there's a huge demand. And for anybody out there who's interested in a great job, the chemical industry is ready to hire you.
Outstanding. No, that's good to hear. We look forward to working with you on that. Our workforce development initiative here is generally priority 1 or 1A, and has been for the last half decade. And you're right. We're targeting the entire demographic specter to try and take advantage of those groups that didn't grow up with a father in the industry or an uncle in the industry, and really expose all of the demographic groups that we have here in Houston, the most international city in the country, right, to the great careers that we have right here. That includes everybody out there. And it's just a matter of getting that information to them at the right time so that they can make that choice, turn down that road in their life and career, and then be rewarded with a 30, 40-year career that pays great, that is safe, that takes care of your family, that gives you a good retirement. All of those things feed into this industry. So we'll definitely want to work with you on that moving forward. We got time for one more question, and I like this one. We'll end on this one, okay? And I'll just let you kind of give your projection there. So even while our economy is still slow, right, we haven't bounced back completely, the specialty chemicals market volumes rose 0.5% in August, up from July. Are we now on our way back? And what does that look like for us over the next 6 months?
Yes, we are on the way back. Now, obviously, the COVID virus will have something to say about that, right? We're not entirely in control of this situation, but we are definitely on the way back. And you see that, I don't want to say across the board because it depends on what market you're in, but we are definitely on a glide path for growth. And it's not just specialty chemical sales or plastics or some of these things that bounce back. It's some of those other kind of broader economic indicators that you look at, whether it's housing starts and some of these other broader indicators in the economy, are starting to tick up as well. And we're figuring out how we can operate. And hey, we might all be working at home, but we're still in business. So again, the next 6 months is probably more of the same, and hopefully it keeps going in the right direction. Mm-hmm. But winter is going to have something to say about that too. And we'll see as more people spend more time indoors and and how do we do? And then obviously too, the potential for more treatments and vaccines will have a role to play in that going forward. So I would say we have a view of cautious optimism going forward. And I think that's maybe a great way for me to wrap up is we've really been punched in the gut, but we've come back strong, and we feel good about the direction we're going in.